Hello and welcome to What Do You Believe? And I'm really excited and happy to have my friends today, Martin and Shareya. Dr. Shareya, you have a PhD in molecular biology, and we're really happy to have you. And Martin, you've been working in electrical engineering for years at Boeing, and now you're still in aerospace. So we're happy to have you guys, and we're excited to hear your questions. We're also happy to have you, Dr. Nagy Eskandar. How are you, Doctor?
Thank you, I'm fine.
Dr. Nagy Eskandar is a medical doctor. He's the fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons in England, and he practiced surgery for 25 years in the UK. You also have a book in Creation Under the Microscope. You've done a lot of TV programs in Arabic like Creation Answers, like The Beginnings, You Created Me a Human Being, and Question Mark. We're happy to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here, David. Yeah.
And we want to just kind of summarize where we are right now. We've been, talking about a lot of different topics, and we're going to move on to a lot of different topics.
Exactly.
So just summarize where we've been and what we're talking about today.
Right. What we are addressing really is the comparison between the creation and the evolution ideas. And we found that there are two starting points. There is a naturalistic way or atheistic way of looking at the world, and that means matter is everything, and everything must be explained by chance, time, and laws of nature. And we discovered that cannot explain life, really. So what we're going to do in this session is to talk about biology in a little bit of detail. And we started talking about Charles Darwin. But I'd like to put this picture before all of us. So the cycles we are going to study is biology and geology and astronomy. These are the three cycles we're trying to cover in many, many sessions in this program. We spoke about Charles Darwin, who was really responsible for explaining the idea of evolution through natural selection and mutation. And he was influenced by the development of millions of years in geology first. And Charles Lyell was a very important person in this. He wrote 3 books called Principles of Geology. And he is proposing that what we see now, the rates of change that we see now of deposition and erosion of the mountains is constant. So he doesn't accept the Noah's flood with the catastrophic geology. And that really brings millions of years into the equation. So let us see what Charles Lyell said here on the screen. I've always been strongly impressed with the way of the observation of excellent writers and skillful geologists who said that for the sake of revelation as well as for the science, the truth we should consider that scriptures were not in existence. So he is refusing the history that's mentioned in the Bible, specifically Noah's flood. So he wants to free science from Moses, from the writings of Moses, and he wants to see the world through the lens of matter, time, laws of nature. So let me just summarize what the uniformitarian naturalism means, because that's very important. They believe that nature is all what exists. Matter is all what exists. There is no creator. There is nobody who made the matter to become in existence. The second thing they said, everything must be explained by time, chance, and laws of nature. So we don't have a creator. And the third part of their belief is the same rates of frequency and power that operated in the past is the same that we see now. So that is the same rate of changes. They don't accept the catastrophic geology of the flood of Moses. Oh, sorry, the flood of Noah that Moses wrote about. So Charles Darwin wrote The Origin of Species, and then he wrote The Descent of Man, as we have a common ancestor, and one branch divided into apes and other divided into, there are many branches obviously, but one of them to the apes group and one to the human race. And Charles Darwin described evolution as this: it is the war of nature from famine and death. The most exalted object which is capable conceiving is the production of higher animals that came at the top. So it's a history of death and life, and we brought them the man and the higher creation at the top. That's completely different from the biblical perspective, because we believe, and the Bible is very clear, that sin entered into the world by Adam's disobedience, and by his disobedience, death entered into the world. So death was not one of the components of God's perfect creation in the week of creation that happened supernaturally. Let us see Carl Sagan, who said that the secrets of evolution are death and time. So all what they need, death and time, to produce life. There is a problem, I think, here. The death of enormous numbers of life forms that imperfectly adapted to environment, and time for long succession of small mutations, and he assumes that mutations are positive, and then this is by accident adaptive to a new environment to become as the human at the end. This is really having many, many problems because mutations are usually backward steps. When mutations happen in a cell, sometimes it causes cancer. But mutation to add information, that's something we need to discuss in detail later on in our talk. So we have millions of years of death and destruction according to evolution theory, and at the top, man comes in at the top. And we have this very famous picture, which is called the March of Progress. And this actually was done by an artist in 1965. And he tried to explain that we came from lower animals, and we started to, instead of walking on four, we started to walk straight, and then came at the end as a man. And Richard Dawkins, commenting on this, give them the facts, show them the evidence, and let them decide. And I agree about that. Let us talk about the facts here. Actually, the article that was written is completely opposite to this drawing, because they believe the human progression is a sort of a tree rather than a straight line. But this became so famous that everybody believes that this is how we came about. Let me just show you the response of Bernard Wood. He's a professor of human origins in Washington University, and he said these words: "There is a popular image of human evolution that you will find all over the place. On the left of the picture, there are the apes. On the right, a man. Between the two is a succession of figures that become more and more like humans. Our progress from ape to human looks so smooth, so tidy. It's such a beguiling image that even the experts are loath at it. But it is an illusion." So the biologists believe that this progression, the progression of apes to man in this very famous drawing is just an illusion. But this is the common thing that you find in biology books and in museums when you visit them.
I mean, it's a good idea. I mean, not a good idea as much as just it looks nice enough that it could be happening, especially that we living today, we can see that we're like technically, I don't want to say evolving, but like, we are evolving, we are maturing, we are growing from like where we were in the 20s and, the 1700s, 1600s. So why can't that be possible in terms of millions of years before that, at least scientifically or biologically?
Yeah. Let me just be very specific here using our words. We are not evolving, we are having more civilization. That's wonderful. But we still have 46 chromosomes, we still have 23 and 23 from the father, from the mother. So we are, as a human being, the building is constant.
So biologically, there isn't any major
Biologically, there is
changes.
we are not developing another arm or another leg. We are the same, but we are developing technology, and that's wonderful because God put in our mind the capability of doing lots of things, and we have to progress in that line. But we should understand as well, the early man was not primitive. The early man and woman were very intelligent. They built the pyramids, we don't know how. They moved tons of rocks, and they cut it accurately to place them in the right position in this big building called the pyramid. We have in England the Stonehenge, which is massive, massive stones, and they are built, and we don't know how they built it and they lift it up. So we shouldn't think that the early man is primitive. It wasn't. The early man was perfect. There was no mutation when God created the world. So they were able to understand and comprehend lots of things. They didn't have computers. They don't need calculators because their mind can work it very easily. So the early man was very civilized. So when you say, David, that we are progressing, yes, and I thank God we are progressing, but that doesn't mean we are evolving in biological sense.
Go ahead.
So how do you explain that's an illustration, but don't they have like Lucy and some other fossils that even if it is branched, how would you explain those different things that look or how people portray them as intermediates?
Right, that's great. We'll talk about the intermediate in detail, but let me speak about Lucy. It's called Australopithecus afrensis, and the bones were discovered in Ethiopia, and in 1974, and they found only 40% of the skeleton. And in the pelvis, it was really not a pelvis of an ape, an animal really that can stand. So a person called Lovejoy took a replica of that skeleton and went to the lab and changed the angles to allow it to stand. They didn't find the foot of Lucy at all. And without the foot, you cannot really be 100% of standing. They didn't find the complete skull. Let me just show you this little clip that explains what happened with Lucy. I'm just going to check my computer to get this bit very quickly.
This has caused the two bones, in fact, to fit together so well that they're in an anatomically impossible position.
The perfect fit was an illusion that made Lucy's hip bone seem to flare out like a chimp's. But all was not lost. Lovejoy decided he could restore the pelvis to its natural shape. He didn't want to tamper with the original, so he made a copy in plaster. He cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. It was a tricky job, but after taking the kink out of the pelvis, it all fit together perfectly, like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. As a result, the angle of the hip looks nothing like a chimp's, but a lot like ours.
So this little clip really shows that the imagination of that scientist that Lucy had to stand. So he has to change the angles of the pelvis because standing is completely different from walking on four. And he has to change that because that's his imagination, actually. So we have only 40% of Lucy, and we have the evidence that Lucy was just an ape. And we'll talk about that in detail. But I just want to show you that what we hear about and what we listen to in the media, we have to examine it properly to make sure it's right.
Well, thank you, Doctor. We'll just take a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like a copy of this episode, please call 714-709-4300 or email us at info@alkarmatv.com. You can also visit our website at www.alkarmatv.com. Also, you can write to P.O. Box 3610, Seal Beach, California, 90740.
Welcome back to What Do You Believe? And Doctor, let's jump right back into Darwinian evolution.
Exactly. Darwinian evolution depends on two main pillars, really. One is natural selection, and number two is random mutations. These are the two pillars of the theory of evolution, Darwinian evolution, really, in the biology. So let us examine them one by one. Natural selection. And we'll have a little example from genetics, and we'll breed few animals here on the screen to understand natural selection. We'll do that in a very simplistic way. We know that genetics are much, much more complicated than what I'm going to explain. But this is the Mendelian sort of genetics, which is the principles of all the other genetics. There is penetration and other things. We'll not go into the details of that, but we'll talk about the basic principles. So as we'll see on the screen here, we are going to examine the length of the fur of the dogs. That's one character we're going to examine. So we'll start by medium size fur, medium length, and we'll have a male and female dogs. So the lady, we put a bow on her head so we know who she is, and the boy is here. So we'll get them married, and we need to understand two words: morphology, that's the outside appearance, and genetic makeup, that is the DNA codes that make the outside appearance. Okay? So the medium here, that means the genetic makeup is short and long, S and L and S and L, right? And that produces the medium. There are many, many other things in genetics. We know them all, but this is not how we should discuss them just now. So I am simplifying it to the maximum. So the parents are medium here, and the makeup is SL and SL. So let us see the offspring. The S, and we have half from the mother and half from the father. So S and S can come and make short hair. S and L can come and cause medium hair. L and L can come and cause long hair. So the parents are medium size, the offspring are short, medium, and long. Okay? Let us take this family and put them in a very cold weather, extreme weather. So what will happen to the short hair? He won't be able to survive. The medium hair won't be able to survive. The only one who can survive this very cold weather is the long hair. So in actual, that's called natural selection. And in actual fact, the natural selection loses information because we have lost S and S and SLL, the short and medium. Mm-hmm. We have lost them completely. They are not there anymore. So the animals with long hair can live in the cold weather. That's natural selection. So it actually reduces information because we lost the S. Let me just confirm that again. So all the people, all the population of these dogs in the cold weather will be just long hair. And that's why long-haired dogs live in the cold weather, short-haired dogs live in the temperate climate or the hot climate. That's natural selection. It's not a creative power. It is a distributing power. But it didn't create anything. It starts with information which was there in the original parents. Let me just confirm that again with an opposite example, just to confirm the idea. So this family, S and S, SL, LL, the short, the medium, the long, will take them to the very hot climate. What will happen? The LL cannot survive, SL cannot survive because it's too hot. The only one who can survive is SS, the short hair. So they die, we have their funeral, and we lose SL and LL. So we have lost the information as a result of the natural selection. So all the dogs that can live in the hot climate are S and S. So we lost the L. So the natural selection is a distributing power. It didn't create anything at all. The genetic pool was the same in the parents, and it just concentrated the genetic information in different climates, and that is the natural selection. So one of the biggest pillars of the evolution theory is the natural selection. And we've proven with this little example that natural selection is not a creative power, it is a distributing power, and as a result, we lose information because we lost the S in the cold climate, we lost the L in the hot climate. So that's the meaning of natural selection. So let us just confirm the idea more and more. So as we can see on the screen now, we'll have the different kinds of dogs. These dogs are coming from the wolf with all the genetic material in the wolf to differentiate into so many types of dogs. But it's not a creation. It is a distribution of genetic pool, which is in the parents. So the wolf here, the coyote, the dingo, the collie, and the bulldog, all of these are reducing information. And then you come to the poodle, very, very little information. So in all this cycle, we are losing information all the time. Let me do it in a simple way so everybody will understand, even if they don't have any scientific background. The jelly beans represents the genetic pool, if you like, okay? So the wolf is a full jar of these jelly beans. Coyote, we have less amount. Dingo, less amount. Collie, less amount. Bulldog, less amount. And the poodle have very small amount. From the small amount, we cannot come back to the wolf We cannot breed the poodle to become a wolf again. There's no chance of that, because there is a small amount of genetic information that cannot be increased. What we started with a very big genetic pool, and now we're coming down all the way. And the cat is a different category altogether. So the natural selection doesn't create, it distributes the genetic information. So let me summarize again. Natural selection is a fact. We believe in natural selection as a Christians. We do believe in natural selection because that's observational science. We can prove it. But natural selection is not a creative power at all. It can explain or can distribute the information, but it cannot really create information from start. Natural selection can explain the survival of the fittest. Yes, the long hair survived in the cold climate. The short hair survived in the hot climate. So it can explain the survival of the fittest, but it cannot explain the arrival of the fittest. And this is the main question, really, about natural selection. I hope that is really clear. I try to simplify it as much as I can. We understand there are lots of issues with genetics, and we're happy to discuss them, but this is the principle, and the principle is stable in all examples that we can bring.
So doctor, if like we're still talking about like how the climate or weather or nature is affecting and is deciding really who lives and who dies, then
Exactly.
then there is still the possibility if there's outer influence into who we become. And you're saying we're not disagreeing with any of that because we can see that and it's proven.
Yes. But what I'm saying here is natural selection is not creative. The long hair, they have already the genetic material to allow them to live in the cold climate. The cold climate did not create the genetic material to allow this animal to live in. Because this animal have the LL, the long and long, he was able to live in this cold climate. So the nature didn't add information, it selects. And that's natural selection. And there's artificial selection. We can do that in the lab.
I think maybe starting a step before that could be a little helpful, because I feel that some people would believe that natural selection is the means to get the different species, but then there's still that question of how did this stuff arise in the first place?
Exactly.
And some people, even though there might be not a lot of ways to exactly prove the mechanism yet, they say, well, the building blocks of life, which are called amino acids, have been found on meteors, and that because of that existence, we can imagine that not at the natural selection part, but just because of time and chance.
And laws of nature.
And that will be able to create that. And then once that's there, then the natural selection will take its place.
Right.
Can you comment on
Oh,
that?
yeah, of course, yeah. If I give you all the essential amino acids that's needed, you can't create a living cell. So despite the fact we have all the components of the cell, we cannot create a living cell. So life comes from life. That's biogenesis. And because of that, we believe, according to the Bible, that God is life. So he can create life. And in the biblical model of creation, God created according to its kind, according to its kind. And that was mentioned 10 times in chapter 1 in the book of Genesis. What that means is, say in day 6, when God created the creeping animals, he didn't create 200 types of dogs at that point. He created the wolf with the genetic pool to differentiate into 200 types of dogs or more. So the question is where life comes from. Life comes from life. So if I give you all the components, all the amino acids that you need, you won't be able to bring a living cell.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, guys. We'll have to continue
sure.
more next episode. I just want to leave you with this. Khalil Gibran said, "A little knowledge that acts is worth infinitely more than much knowledge that is idle." And I just want to ask you today, and maybe think about it. What do you believe and what do you know that you can use to change something around you, to change yourself? So we'll see you next time on What Do You Believe? Thank you for watching.